Okay, I'm
B or
glad you asked
B2C?
that.
Yeah.
Lots of answers, but I'll give you the big one for me.
All
There's a
right.
formula that I did not invent called B as in boy, D as in dog, F as in Frank, the BDF formula.
Okay.
What you want to do is you want to analyze three things about your target audience.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Persuasion Play Podcast. My name is Jeffrey from Goldmine.marketing, where I write about, blog about, tweet about, and interview very intelligent people around the ideas of persuasion, motivation, and influence, and how you can influence your brain and the brains around you towards better outcomes. Today I have a very special guest, Mr. Bob Bly. Bob's calling in from New Jersey. How are you this morning, Bob?
Good. How you doing, sir?
I'm all right. It's summertime and I got a house full of kids, so I'm kind of not in my normal
Mhm.
vacation, but that's all right. That's all right. Cool. Well, why don't you give us a little history, Bob? You've been a copywriter for 40 years now, is that right?
I became a full-time copywriter in the late 70s. I
Oh,
got
okay.
I got into Marcom working in the corporate world for Westinghouse in
Okay.
1979. And I was there for a year. Then I went to another company where I was the advertising manager. You know who the famous Koch brothers are?
Yeah, actually, KOCH, is that right?
Yeah, KOCH.
Yeah,
So
they have a big plant here in the Twin Cities, Minnesota area.
yeah, so I worked in their New York City office for David Koch, who was one of the billionaire Koch brothers, who was my boss.
Oh, wow.
Did that for a few years. And then they asked me to move to the headquarters in Wichita, which I was happy to do. But my fiance at the time said, I don't want to go to Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah,
So I told him, I said, I can't go. And I didn't want to go get another job. I said, what could I do for a living that has to relate to my marketing communications? And I said, maybe the part I like best is writing. So I became a freelance copywriter in February 1982. And I've been doing that ever since.
wow. And you are, you love writing, is that right? You've always wanted to,
The,
not necessarily always perhaps, but you love writing.
well, either the sad thing or the good thing, depending on how you view it, as I do, because I like many things. I enjoy many things. But in terms of what I love to do, writing is the only one. You know, someone once asked my writing hero, I don't know if you know the name Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote the Foundation series. They said, what do you love to do? What are the top 10 things? And he said, write, 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 write. And that's the way it is. Writing is the only thing I still love to do. And I am at today 68. I've been doing this for over 45 years.
Mhm.
And oddly, I don't know why, I still not only like it, I love it.
That-
This is my happy place.
That's great. And so do you still take on client work?
Oh, I always have. I am, unlike a lot of the other people today who are busy, who are course, I give courses people or mentors or coaches. I've always been, I mean, I do other things, but I've always been primarily what I call a contract copywriter. I write copy per project for clients, mainly corporate and medium-sized business clients. So I'm a traditional freelance copywriter. I'm not a sales funnel specialist. I'm not a full stack copywriter. I'm a traditional copywriter. So yes, and I've been doing client projects nonstop as again for over 45 years, still doing them today.
That's cool. And in addition to all the client work, if the viewer or listener goes to bly.com, you have testimonials and case studies and examples of a lot of the work you've done. And yeah, it sounds, or it looks like in so many different industries.
Yeah, I mean, that's my main thing, copywriting. That's my vocation, I tell people. My avocation is writing books. And I've
And you know,
written books for, I don't do the what you see today, write a book in a day or whatever, I write books for mainstream. When I started, in 1982, my first book, I wrote it for McGraw-Hill, hardcover book, mainstream publishers. And I've written, at this point, I just finished book, and it's coming out in November, number 110. So I've written
wow, yeah.
110 books.
I have here, you have over 100, but now it's at 110. Well, I have two of them here. Fourth edition of the Copywriter's Handbook. Pretty much everybody should know this if you don't as a
Thank you.
copywriter.
Thank
And
you.
then the Direct Mail Revolution, got this a few years ago as well. I think came out in 2019. And a big thing about Direct Mail Revolution is and I'm hearing this more and more in my marketing circles. Online ads are less trustworthy. They are often scammy and clickbaity. Emails get ignored. And I'm an email. I mean, I do a lot of email marketing.
Me too.
Um, and that doesn't quite have the money and trust behind it that receiving something in the mail would do, right?
That's true. And there's other studies that show print is more credible. Now, the downside of direct mail, which I have to tell, is that people are resistant because doing direct mail, in terms of print media, not online, but print, is one of the more complicated mediums. You know, running a magazine ad is pretty simple, although there aren't that many magazines left.
Yeah.
But running a billboard is still pretty simple, although there's new stuff in that too. I don't know. I saw an article yesterday in Adweek, the newest thing, scratch and sniff billboards.
How does that work?
You walk up just like a scratch and sniff in the magazine. It's amazing. This is the first time I saw it. So the billboard for like one of these underarm things, you see those commercials with the people always, which I hate. You walk up to the billboard and you scratch it, and you can smell the perfume scent of the underarm deodorant. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, it is.
You just when I always used to say there's nothing new under the sun, but I'm wrong. There is. So
Yeah.
So direct mail is one of the more complicated mediums, and therefore younger people today, I hate to say younger, but you're younger, they haven't done it. For me,
Yeah.
it's old hat. I've been doing it for 40 years. But a lot of people, when I say, what have you guys thought about direct mail? They're very intimidated because they don't know. The first thing is, where do I get a list?
Mhm.
Where do I put the stamp on the envelope? Do I use first class or third class? People don't know. These
Yeah.
are known things, but people today don't know them. So
Well,
it's a drawback.
a lot of it gets laid out in here for sure.
Yeah, that's why I wrote the book. So people
Yeah.
who want to do it, and I love direct mail. Direct mail doesn't have the primacy in the marketing mix that it used to. When I
Mhm.
started as a freelance copywriter in the early 80s, I mainly, for decades, I was a direct mail copywriter.
Mhm.
I wrote other things, but that was what it was. And back then, direct mail was the for freelance copywriter was where the money was. For the
Sure.
clients, it was where they made their money. And copy, we used to say in those days, I'm not sure I would say it today, but we said copy was king, and it certainly was king in direct mail.
Interesting. So then, yeah, how does that, if you could run us through it a bit, because if you have the experience, how does somebody go about picking a list? How does somebody go about tailoring their message and testing on an expensive medium? Part of the digital advertising is you get metrics and feedback pretty quick, and you can adjust your message.
Well, that's one of the many drawbacks of direct mail, which is why I say it is no longer the top channel today. One of them is it is slower feedback, and it's
Mhm.
more expensive to test.
Yeah, of
You know who Ken McCarthy is, right?
course. Yeah.
So Ken we were at a meeting and he spoke, this was decades ago, and he said, guys like me, he meant him, but I was there too. He said, we know more, not because we're smarter, but because when you do a direct mail test, and this is back again 30 years ago, you're gambling $25,000 at least, $30,000. And once you send it out, you can't tailor it or twink it. It's out there, it's
Yeah.
gone, and it either works or it doesn't work. So it's an expensive gamble. So we had to be we had to put it out there to the best it could be. And he says, and people don't have that discipline today because now I saw a terrible email from a marketer I respect, and I said, this is a crappy email. He goes, it doesn't matter. We send out a billion emails. We'll send out another one. It'll work. We'll make the nut at the end. So it's a different world today. So
Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, but in terms of lists, the easiest way is there are direct mail. You rent mailing lists, unlike in email marketing where you want to build your own list primarily. And you can rent email lists, but you in direct mail, it's mainly you rent lists. You also, of course, your own list is the gold. That's the best performing list. But you rent lists to acquire new customers, and you go to what's called a mailing list broker. Now, if I can give a free resource, uh,
Please.
if you go to my site, bly.com, go to the bottom, there'll be a button that says vendors. You click on vendors and you click on direct mail mailing lists. And it lists all the direct mail list companies or not all of them, but a lot of them that I've used. And I could actually give some of their names now, but
Go ahead.
there are list brokers, and you go to a list broker.
Yeah, you can feel free to give some names. I remember, I mean, even as recent as maybe last year, just reading a lot about SRDS, standard rate and data sheet, I think it is. and how you can go to the library and look up lists. So I think as of last year, I asked my local library, hey, where can I get a copy of this physical book that has it? Because the
Did they
alternative,
have it?
no, they didn't, and they couldn't find
No,
it anywhere in the
because
system that would share stuff.
SRDS, I think it's SRDS.com. They're online now. But
Yeah, but you have to pay for a membership. I was hoping to just page through the books,
yeah, for example, one of my favorite list brokers, and I'm just doing,
Please.
there's many on my vendors page, is Reach Marketing,
Okay.
which used to be Edith Roman Associates. Merit Direct is another one. I think they're still around. Um, there's Macro Mark. There's lots of them. And the difference is people would say, I want to rent a list, but I think this is a good list. I'll just rent that one. No, you should go to a broker. You shouldn't go to the list owner, because if you go to the list owner, they're going to say, sure, rent my list because they get paid. But the list broker, they know all the lists that what would be right for your market. And because they have lots of clients, they know what people have been using and what has been working for people in your product area, your industry. So they will give you, they'll say, hey, yeah, you're interested in the list of chemical engineering magazine subscribers, but we also have the American Chemical Society and we have the Professional Engineer Society, and we'll send you the information on those lists and we'll tell you how they've worked and who they've worked for. So you're better to go to a list broker. And the list broker doesn't charge you. This is the cool thing. They don't charge you for the list recommendations. It's free. They only charge you if you rent one or more of their lists.
So it's good guidance is what you're saying.
It's good free guidance.
Expertise, yeah.
That's how you rent a list.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember, I think Doberman Dan telling a story about his first mailing, and he picked a couple, and then he had a third to pick, and the broker gave him a suggestion, and that ended up being the one that blew all the other ones away.
Here's the weird thing. I did a mailing in a very narrow niche where there were two trade publications. So we said, so my client said, let's mail magazines A list. I said, let's test A and B. And the magazines, if you looked at them, they looked like they were photocopies of one another. They were so identical. So we tested magazine list A and magazine list B. It was for people who owned a certain type of computer, companies, a business computer. And one got triple the results of the other. I would have never guessed this. Often what happens is not what you would think. That's why the old axiom. You don't know what you're doing until you test, because no one can say what's going to work until you test it. It's easy for me at this point with my experience to look at something and say, I think that's going to bomb. But in terms of knowing whether it's going to work or not, you don't know until you test.
Well, I think I don't know, I was paging through these two books the other day just to kind of get ready for this. In one of them you say, and I think you maybe have a higher track record than many. I think in one of them you say 25% of the time you can beat the control, 50% of the time you match the control, and 25% of the time you don't.
Indirect mail, yeah, indirect mail. I mean, there's some people who claim a much better track record, and they probably have it. They're the greats. But in direct mail for all these decades, if I averaged 25% of the time I wrote a test package against the client's control mailing, I would beat it handily. Probably half the time we would be around the same, which some people would consider a losing proposition, but most smart clients didn't. They say, oh, now I have another control, a co-control. So when I control tires, I have another mailing I know ready to go that works. And 25%, I would lose. I would underperform. And it's not that I'm a crappy copywriter. Somebody may have said that, but to get a winner, you have to take risks. In other words, you have to make an assumption and say, I think people, for example, you've seen this beer commercial, tastes great, less filling. Which one of those appeals is stronger? Is it taste great or less filling?
Depends on the
So
person.
if I was doing a direct mail and I picked one of them and I picked the wrong appeal, this is the main reason why you lose tests. If you pick the right one, you'll have a winner. It's not your great copywriting, it's you have the right appeal. If you pick the wrong one, you're going to lose. So anybody who doesn't have losers is not trying.
Sure. And a good thing, or not maybe, but with direct mail, testing, say, 2,000 mailings isn't cheap, but once you start to scale up, you start to see economies of scale there, right?
Yeah, the tests, you're testing a small quantity. And so, yeah, it isn't cheap. Uh, but let's say you wanted to test two versions of a mailing. You can, I won't go into the math of it now. It's in the book and I can certainly explain it if you want me to, but you can test relatively modest quantities. We used to say back in the day, you had to test 5,000 names per list. But why did we say that? Because all the list brokers didn't want to rent you fewer than 5,000 names. They were trying to sell, but people who analyzed it, and Steve Roberts of Edith Roman, my longtime client, I think he may be retired today, maybe still active. His company's still around, and we found that if you tested 2 or 3,000 names, you could get an accurate per test cell accurate read. So you know, so yeah, it costs money. I mean, if you test, let's say a total do it, let's say each test cell is 3,000 names, and you do 3 test cells, you're mailing 9,000 pieces. You know, if it's so there's an expense there. It's not huge, but versus online, yeah, internet it doesn't cost nothing, but it costs us almost nothing.
Yeah,
But
it's a
the
lot.
other fearsome thing is when you do direct mail, which is another reason people stay away from it. You send it out there, and then there's silence.
Yeah, you got to wait for the orders to come in.
You look in the mailbox. You look in the mailbox, and
Yeah.
you go through these phases. First, you're very hopeful, then you start to get desperate, then you despair, then you start to cry, and then you open the mailbox the next day, and the reply cards and the order forms just fall out of there. And so, but it's slower feedback. And again,
Yeah.
as I said, once it's out there, you can't say, "Oh, I want to tweak it." No, it's gone.
Mhm.
They're all in the post office.
So when you would do a test mailing, would you do the different appeals or what? Because when often, especially with digital and so much instant feedback, the idea is to just do one change at a time to see how that works, an A/B test. But with a mailing, um, that doesn't work necessarily because if you're doing a whole different appeal for taste great, less filling, maybe your call to action
There's
for
there's
both,
two there's two test approaches to direct mail.
Okay.
One is the full true test. There's a control mailing, that's great mailing, and the client will come to me and say, write a mailing that'll kill it. Whatever you can do. So we're testing two different things. But the other way to do it, you can test, as you said, like you can online, factors. You can do this whole mailing. Like I did a mailing for a piece of software where the only thing that we changed was the headline of the outer envelope and the letter, and the thing the same, and it was an offer number. We put an offer at it. The test mailing basically said now you can get great business software that Fortune 5,000 companies use at a fraction of what they paid for it. And then the test package said the same thing, but underneath said accounts receivable $1, accounts payable $1, general inventory control $1, listed all the modules and they were $1 each. How is that possible? So that's what we tested, and I can explain how we were able to do that. And that adding just the 5 modules with the dollar increased the revenue from that package tenfold.
Just by being more specific about what they're getting and the great value.
It's an old technique. We call it the magic of $1. Everyone says, "Hey, free is the greatest offer." Usually, yes, but not always. For
Okay.
example, sometimes saying it's a penny or a quarter
Yeah.
or $1 will do better.
Hmm.
For example, I had a client that I have him to this day that does they're the big office cleaning janitorial service in Long Island, New York. And they came to me and they were doing a free offer where they said, "Hey, you respond to this, we'll come into your facility no matter what size and we'll clean it for free. And if you're satisfied, then you'll start to hire us. But if not, no charge and you got a free office cleaning." So I changed it, and I took that package and tested it against their control. I said, "We'll clean it for a penny," and glued to the letter was a penny, and the letter said, "We'll clean it for a penny, and I've even given you the penny,"
Uh-huh.
and that crushed their control and remained the control for 20 years. Now we've
Partly that,
increased it to a quarter, but
partly that could be the lumpy mail. They get something and there's a
it's
heavy
the
clump.
lumpy mail, but yeah, it's also the tangible, it being tangible. Um, Magic of $1. And you can give things away for free, but if you say $1, a penny, that works. So
More buying.
yeah, so that we would might so anyway, going back to your original point, in that case we just tested offer. You can test colors. You can have you can have an envelope that's all yellow, that's all black, that's all orange. You could test headlines. You can test terms. For example, and this is done online, not in direct mail, but you'll in the dietary supplement field where I do a lot of work, the typical offer is, hey, why don't you, oh no, not dietary supplements. I saw a thing for a health newsletter. I do a lot of natural health newsletters. So there's a new promotion, you may have seen it online, where they say, hey, get our book about how to have a healthy liver for free. But when you sign up, you realize it's not free. It's free, but you pay $5.95 shipping and handling. And you get bonuses. One of the bonuses is a report. The second bonus is a report. The third bonus is a 3-month subscription to our newsletter. But they have your credit card. So if you tell them to stop, you've now subscribed to their newsletter where you thought you were just getting a free book. It's very innovative. I didn't come up with it. And I see I hate the term crushing it. I hate those kind of words, but it's crushing it in the health field. And and there a number of publishers are using it now.
So kind of the Max Sackheim negative option of the book of the month club kind of thing. But do you think that's a little underhanded, or do you think people kind of signed up for this?
You have to make your own determination about that. But in the way I think it's being done, it's not underhanded, because clearly it gets your attention. It says free, and then you see this not only with those offers, but others. It says free, pay $5.95 shipping and handling. I don't think that's underhanded.
No, that part's not underhanded. But signing people up for the newsletter.
They make it very clear. They say you get these bonuses. The only thing you could say is maybe underhanded is they don't tell you, hey, if you don't tell us to stop, we're going to keep billing your card. And they probably do that in print that is a little too fine, too fine. But that's a borderline issue that we won't get into here. Yeah. I tend to be on the side of I'd rather be more ethical than less so.
Sure.
But I'm not a maniac about it.
Yeah, right on. So you just said you work in the supplement business.
I work in a number of fields. I mean, the main ones I work in, I do a lot of consumer financial investment newsletters, stock market newsletters, options trading services, financial, health, mainly alternative health. I've done a lot of mainstream health too, but alternative health, and then and then B2B.
So a lot of B2B and B2C. What's the big differences you see there in the way copywriters should approach what they're selling?
In difference between what, B2B and B2C?
Yeah, because like in a B2B environment, there's a whole lot more often, depending on the price, but more stakeholders and decision makers, and often perhaps somebody you don't even know who's holding the purse strings, versus B2C is like you whip people into a frenzy and they just order now and damn the torpedoes.
Well, I've written extensively on this, and I've identified 7 key differences between B2B and B2C. And I probably have that where I could send it to your listeners, but it's in one of I wrote a book years ago, Business to Business Direct Marketing. You can get it used on Amazon for like $1. I don't make any money from it, or $10 or $5, and it has that list. But for example, one of the differences is that in B2B and B2C is that the business buyer, and you just said it, it's a group decision. So there's multiple buying influences. So therefore, in the B2B mailing, how am I going to appeal? Either I'm going to mail to one of those groups, or if I'm mailing to all of them, how do I appeal to the interests of each different group? We did a B2B marketing promotion for a telecom company offering corporate telecom services, specifically to large enterprises, disaster recovery services. What if the guy outside runs over your main cable and your power goes out? What happens to your data center? What happens to your telecom? What happens to your voice communications? So we said, who are the buying influences? Well, the CEO is going to care about this, but the telecom manager and the IT director are going to care about this. So what we did is we had a list, we got both those names, and we sent one letter to the CEO, and in the PS of it, we said, PS, we've already sent information on this to your your telecom director, you ought to talk to her or him about this because it's really important. And then we sent one that went directly to the telecom manager and said, by the way, we're notifying your CEO about this. They're going to ask you about this. You may want to take a look at what we sent you. And that worked. That actually won what's called a Gold Echo Award. It's like the Caples Award for direct mail. And that was one of the most successful mailings I ever was involved in. We generated in 90 days $5.6 million in orders for the telecom. And we actually got that was a very expensive mailing. But we got a 50% response. Inquiries,
Wow.
not orders, inquiries,
Yeah.
generating leads.
That's high though. That's great.
Yeah, and what we did is to dramatize the point, we sent them back then, because this was years ago. Back then, it was actually an audio cassette. Now you might do a thumb drive or a CD. We sent them an audio cassette, and when they played the audio cassette began. This is the sound, and you hear these ticking and clicking and whirring and phones ringing and computers. This is the sound of a telecom disaster, and the tape goes shh. We held that for like 10 seconds. And it would work. It worked, as we say in direct mail, it worked like gangbusters.
Right on. So your promotion in this situation targeted different people with different mailings rather than just trying to send a
Yeah,
package.
but the thing we did that made it work is we said to people A, we're telling people B. We said to people B, we're telling people A. So they felt compelled. I can't ignore this. What if the CEO walks into my office and said, "What are we doing about disaster recovery with US West? That's a great offer. If I don't know about it, I better look into this."
That's pretty brilliant.
Doing the split mailing wasn't my idea. I wrote the copy, but it worked out well. It was a smart idea for the telecom man, the marketing manager at US West.
Yeah, I got to keep that one in mind. That's cool. Hey, real quick on the idea of a control, you said that with the different modules for $1 each. And certainly this is going to depend on who your client is.
Right.
But if they have a control and you say, all right, and they ask you to write something and you say, okay, hey, give me everything you got. And you go through all their research and previous mailings and how they performed. And you just take their existing control and update the headline and maybe the PS or, the module list at the bottom. And now that's a new control. Do you get, you as the writer, and again, it's going to depend on the vendor, but do you get credit for that new control?
Here's the interesting thing.
You punched it up?
Here's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Different clients have different viewpoints.
Mhm.
One client said to me, I've had clients say, well, all you really did is, you highlighted it in blue or you put a piece of bubble gum in the envelope. Do we got to really pay you for that? Is it, does that pay you for a new control? On the other hand, I've had some clients whom I think, and I get that, I understand that. I'm a frugal person, but I've had clients, one of them, I know, I won't name him, but he's very famous. If I named him, you'd know him. And he said, I don't care what you do, how much you change it, how little. All I want is the result. If you can get me a package that beats its control, I'll pay. And if you spend 6 years writing it, or you put perfume on the letter and you were done, that's good. And sometimes, so it really is depends. It's case by case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting the response. If you had the idea to up it, the idea that's going to make the difference. That's right on. So what do you think? Let's stick with business for a little bit still. What do you think smaller businesses could do differently to improve the outcomes of their marketing and advertising, direct mail or online, like smaller or medium-sized businesses? Should they be hiring copywriters and marketers, especially if somebody is, just like a very small 5-person shop doing whatever?
So I am very, as I mentioned, I'm a cheapskate, and I don't like to make people spend money. And and I like if I have a small business. Now I go too much in the other way. I'm always trying to save people money, but if it's a small business, I say it depends. What I first tell them, I said, if you're going to test something, whether in direct mail or any other marketing, make sure you're not spending your mortgage money on it. Think about
Sure.
the person. If you're a really small business, if you do this, like I used to say in direct mail, if you do this mailing and we drop 10,000 pieces, and it gets zero response because they say, what'll the response be? I said, it can be anywhere from 0 to 100%. That's the truth. And it's more likely that it would be 0 than 100.
Sure.
So if you got 0%, you dropped this and nothing happened, would you miss a mortgage payment? If you would, don't do it. Find other, because there are other marketing channels that are much less expensive to test. And I work with, as you and my clients, we work with a lot of them. So I may discuss something alternative, or even in direct mail. I would have people come and say to me, hey, Bob, small business, I want you to write a 16-page magalog. And I said, gee, that's, forget my fee. That's going to be a lot of money. I'm not sure you need that. And I'll say to them, why don't we test a 6x9 postcard? Now, I get paid a lot less to write that postcard. So I'm not making money there. But I feel I have an ethical obligation to help them get the best, forgive the cliche, bang for the buck. So I will suggest that I do what's best for the client, even if it costs me money. I know I said I could have talked these people into a very expensive mailing. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And then an upside on that for a marketer or a writer could be to take a percentage of sales, so that if it does well, the business owner isn't out a whole bunch. I'm sorry, if it doesn't do well, the business owner isn't out a whole bunch of money, but if it does well,
and that is much easier today in the digital world.
Okay.
It wasn't the direct mail world for a variety of reasons. For example, someone will come to me and say, we're a company I haven't heard of, and we'll pay you a percentage of the sales. It's not digital. So how do I know what that is?
Yeah.
I have to trust you. Now, the clients that I did get a royalty, we called it in the direct mail world royalty. Back in the day when it was paper direct mail, if you would do a mailing for a large volume client, not well, there's small businesses and large. Let's say a large volume client, that mailed in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some of them in the millions. You would get paid what calls a mailing fee, typically for each piece, not based on the results of the sales, but for each piece they mailed of your promotion, you get 2 cents, you get 3 cents. Gary Bensavenga used to sometimes get a nickel. That was in the upper end of the scale. And so therefore that was trackable because you didn't have to know how much their sales were. You just could look at their postal receipts, and they wouldn't be mailing it if they weren't making money for it. So that's what we did. And go ahead.
It sounds tiny, 2 or 3 cents per piece, but when they're sending in the millions.
Yeah. I mean, I was getting, back in those days when I did those deals, and a lot of my clients didn't do that because I had clients that were two-step direct marketers, lead generation. If I'm doing a mailing for IBM selling a mainframe computer, that doesn't work, because the mailing isn't selling anything. They're just getting a meeting with a salesperson. Whether they get the sale or not depends on, back in the day, the salesperson. So that was, a lot of clients couldn't work that situation. But even when they could, the question was, how do you know? So the mailing fee per piece was one way to do it. I once had a situation where, because smaller businesses don't know this, but they're not as sophisticated. So I did a mailing for a guy who I'm still friendly with him today. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do the mailing. I won't charge you a per mailing fee, but if I beat it, you pay me a bonus of $10,000. So I said, if it becomes the new control, you pay me $10,000. So I followed up with him. He said, hey, well, it's doing well. If you beat it's beating the control by 50%. I said, so you owe me money? He goes, no, I don't. I go, why? He goes, I haven't made it to new control yet. I go, what do you mean you haven't made it to new control? He goes, well, that was one time. I don't know that it's going to happen again and again. I said, that's the definition of control, but I wasn't clear with him. I assumed he knew this. He didn't. And he ended up paying me, but we were friendly. I was very frustrated at the time. And he mailed that piece for, again, for decades. I'm still in touch with him today.
Wow. But that one-time fee?
That one-time fee, yeah, that one-time fee.
Yep. Right on. What should copywriters, what do you see copywriters doing today?
Copywriting is completely different than it was when I started. And here are the major differences. I probably should have made a list. Number one is that when I did it, it was, as I said, direct mail, copy was king. But now, as a copywriter, I just wrote copy. If I did a direct mail package, they had their own graphic designer or they hired one of my graphic designers. But I didn't do that work. And they say, well, do you have a graphic designer? I'd say, yeah, you can hire them. And I'd recommend Lori Haller or someone. But I said, but it's not a package deal. You make your deal with me, you make your deal with her. So, I didn't deliver a one-stop solution. Nowadays, we are in the digital age. Copywriters tend today, I'm old, so I don't do this. I'm 68. They tend to be what we call, you've heard this term, full stack copywriters. They do it all. I have colleagues and friends who do that, but I don't. So that's the major trend. Clients are going toward people to handle everything. They do the design, they set up the funnel. That's another big thing. A lot of copywriters, what they do is write copy, but primarily more than copywriting, they say, I'm a sales funnel designer or creator. And that's very big today. And I know what a sales funnel is, but I don't do that per se. I do offer advisory and consulting services, but I'm not a sales funnel guy. I'm not a full stack copywriter. That's and the other thing is today, more and more copywriters are becoming what we call solo digital agencies. They're not copywriters. They're actually like digital ad agencies, even though they're basically one person and they pull in what else they need from other vendors. I sort of did that myself, but I wasn't an agency. I just wrote the copy. And if people said, well, I need a mailing list, I need a printer, I'd send them to my website, say, go on the vendors page, look on printers, and go hire them yourself. But a lot of copywriters today want to manage the whole thing and control it that way. It's not what I enjoy doing. Again, you go back to your original question, what do I like? The only thing I really love to do is write. I know direct mail strategy. I know marketing strategy. I've written books on the subject. I've done it for corporate clients. I've been a keynote speaker at Fortune 500 companies' marketing meetings. I know this stuff, but I don't want to do this stuff. All I really want to do is write. So when I became freelance in the early 80s, full time, 82 was the first full year, I said, what do I want to do? And my definition of success.
You're listening to another exclusive interview from the Persuasion Play Podcast with Jeffrey Thomas.
And my definition of success for me was doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, when I want to do it, where I want to do it, with whom I want to do it. It didn't say making X dollars. It didn't say I had to be a multimillionaire or I had to be, I had to be the big dog. I wasn't looking to become rich. In fact, I don't know if you get my newsletter, my e-newsletter. If not, people want to see it. You go to bly.com/reports, you can get it. And I wrote an article about this for next week, so you can see it. But I said, that's what I wanted. Other people today, they might be much more obsessed with being the biggest. I don't know the guy personally, but look at Alex Hormozy. He's become world famous this week. That's not me. I admire the hell out of people who love that. I have another client of mine is Mark Ford from Agora Publishing, Bill Bonner. I know those guys. That's not me. I never wanted to be rich. My goal is, and maybe I'm going on too long about this. I grew up, my father, who was my hero, worked his whole life at a job he hated. Hated it. And he was my hero because he did it to take care of us. And he endured. And I said, I love him. I admire him, but I made it my goal. And he knew this, to not be him.
Yeah.
To me, the most important thing was, if you're going to do something 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, 5, 6 days a week for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, I couldn't imagine not loving it. And he didn't, and a lot of people don't, but I did. In that aspect, I consider myself lucky. I think I made a good decision. And so that's how I played it out. Am I the best copywriter in the world? No. Am I the most successful? No. But my clients are happy. I have a long list of clients who say I do good work for them, and I have a decent reputation. And I always put the client first, and that has worked out for them and for me.
And based on your definition of success, by hitting all those things, doing what you want to do, when you want to do it, where you want to do it, you're successful. But I think in addition, you have made quite a career for yourself, right? I mean, you've been in the game
I
for
I still,
years.
well, again, I'm can't believe I'm this old. You can see, I'm 68. How old are you? You don't mind me asking?
46. I was born in
Yeah. So when
79.
you're 46, you never think you can't imagine being 68. You think you're already, somebody said the other day, I just turned 40. I'm so old. That's how I felt when I turned 40. But, today it's a more youthful society. But, um, I never imagined that I would be this age, and that I still love work. I mean, it irritates my wife. She's in the house now, so I don't want to be too loud. But because I used to have an outside office, now I work at home, and you know, this is what I love. I'm happiest sitting right at this computer, at this keyboard, reading. This is what I say to people: reading, writing, and thinking for my clients. That's all I want to do. And I'll stop. She'll come in one day. I'll have died. She'll find me with my nose down in the keyboard, and the letters going da 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 da. My Isaac Asimov. I mentioned him. Barbara Walters once asked him. He was very prolific. He loved writing, and he wrote over 450 books. And she said to him, "What would you do if you found out you had only a month to live?" And without missing a beat on TV, he said, "I'd type faster.
Yeah,
I'd type faster."
that's great. Do you do any sort of speak to text kind of thing? Just let your ideas
No,
flow?
no, I hate
You're-
all that stuff, and hate is too strong a word. My father never said use hate, but I hate it. I love the key. I don't even use a laptop. I'm at a desktop PC now.
Mhm,
I don't write on a smartphone. I use a keyboard board with raised keys, typewriter style. I
mhm.
don't like
Cool.
like the laptop keyboards. This
Like
came
the
with my Dell. Yeah, I like the click. I learned to
yeah.
write. Well, I wrote for many years on an IBM Selectric, which was the princess. But what's the reason I love typing so much? When I was, do you have time for a story?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So when I was 12 years old, my father said, "You're going to summer school." I said, "What, Dad?" And I was a good student. I was a terrible athlete, but I was a good student. I said, I got good grades." He says, "You're going to take typing." I said, "What?" Back then, people who typed were women, were secretaries. If you were
Sure.
an executive, you didn't have a typewriter on your desk.
Uh,
He felt it was important for me to learn to type. He did not anticipate the PC. So we went to this class. You take the cover off the old manual typewriter, not electric manual, and I look
mhm.
down and the keys are blank. I had to learn to type on a typewriter with blank keys.
Uh-huh.
The result of that, I became a very fast, high-speed touch typist. I could test at 100 words per minute,
Oh,
and it served me well. He never imagined what would happen with the PC. It served me well with the PC coming along. I had great typing skills. So it's thanks to Dad again.
that's cool. That's cool. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in, you don't know this area, Paterson, New Jersey, which is if you look it up, it's a very, I don't want to say blue collar, it's a downscale town. It's a
Okay.
city. I don't want to say poor, but like Newark, New Jersey, Paterson, these are poor city. We didn't have much money. That's everybody's story, but it was true in his case. And Paterson was famous for a few things. You heard of the Great Falls?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the second largest waterfalls on the East Coast next to Niagara, and we live very close to the Great Falls, which is a fantastic thing, natural phenomenon. And it was the birthplace or the home to several celebrities, one of which, Abbott and Costello.
Oh, yeah.
Lou Costello was a big guy there. He was a very nice guy, and we would see him walking around. And they put up a Lou Costello museum, and then also the two poets, Allen Ginsberg and William Carlos Williams. So and Patterson was where the submarine was invented in the Passaic River, uh, or the Hackensack River nearby. So I loved growing up there. I consider that we lived there till I was 10, and even though I lived other places, that's everybody thinks of some places their home. That's my home. I bought a couple of T-shirts that say "My story began in Patterson," and I'm a Patterson boy. I love Patterson, New Jersey.
Yeah. Are you still living near there now?
Not too far. We moved. My parents moved when I was 10 to Fairlawn, which was just across the river,
Yeah.
and it was okay. I didn't like it as much as Patterson. It was more up. She did it where mom did it because Patterson was getting to be a rough town. And did you ever see the Stand By Me movie with Joe Clark, Morgan Freeman? That was the
Sure.
high school I was going to go to. And they moved
Oh,
as I was approaching high school age, and they didn't want me to go there. It was a very rough school. And also, it wasn't, it was, he made it better, but it wasn't a good education system. So we moved across the river to Fairlawn, which had a better school system. And then, I moved, mainly I stayed in this area. I lived in Maryland for a time. And now I still live in Morris County, New Jersey, so I'm not that far from Patterson.
so when your wife didn't want to move to Wichita, did your work take you other places throughout your career or life, or did
I
once you
never
got wife?
lived, I never lived anywhere else.
Okay.
And I'm not a big traveler, but in my first 10, 15 years of my career, I was doing a lot of corporate training seminars. For example, a company will call up and say, we have a group of 20 engineers. I'm a chemical engineer. We have a group of 20 engineers and they need a course in technical writing. So I teach it. And so I would travel throughout the country. Then I started getting calls for copywriting seminars uh, internationally. So I would,
Mm.
and so I went, to give seminars to Italy, Korea, Poland, Germany, France, England. And in fact, all the travel I ever did internationally was on someone else's dime giving seminars. And that was fine with me.
Yeah, it sounds so bad.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you've talked a little bit about your success, different ways that you define success, and um, that you are, 25% of the time able to become the new control. Give us a good story about just a spectacular failure, could you?
Yes. Now you might not relate to this because you didn't hear it. There used to be a service called EBSCO that sold magazine subscriptions for doctors' waiting offices. Now there's no magazines because of COVID. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to touch them. Did it since COVID, but that was a big business, and there were several companies that did it. There are subscription services, and their mailings all had stamp sheets. I don't know if you know what I mean by stamp sheet, where there were stamp sheets with pictures of the magazines. So you would tear off the stamp of the magazine you want, lick it, and put it on the order form. So if you wanted 5 magazines, you would do that. So I hated stamp sheet mailings. And I came up with the bright idea. So I said, let's get rid of the stamp sheets. You'll save money, and you check off the name of the magazine you want. It was the biggest spectacular failure I ever had. They never talked to me again. And I learned the lesson. You don't change something that major on your first go around unless you absolutely have a reason not to. And it was just my prejudice against them. There was no logical reason to get rid of it. And it turns out that stamp sheets were the involvement device that made all those mailings work. I was really
Yeah.
stupid, you know.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
that was not good for me, and they lost money on that. But it happens. That's why people stay away from direct mail today, because there is that risk. If it was electronic, it wouldn't have been that horrific.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't have been that horrific, but there's also a whole lot less of an involvement device of any sort when you're doing things digitally. Like
That's true. Yes.
you're not getting the tactile feel or filling out the order form with a pen. Um, it's just a different beast, certainly. Right.
Yeah. That's why it exists today. There's room for both. And I think the main reason direct mail is fading, aside from the expense, is it scares people because they don't know how
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah. But there's still writers and direct mail agencies out there.
Oh,
So,
I got a mailing yesterday in the mail from, of all people, Indeed.
yeah.
Do you want to hire? And years ago, I did some mail for them that worked out very well. I should contact them and say, why aren't you mailing this piece? It did very well, but I guess it must have fatigued. We call it when you have a control that doesn't, that doesn't stay the control forever, it fatigues. So,
Mhm.
they've been doing, this was years ago, but I looked at their mailing and, they're still using it. It's funny, people talk about how ironic it is that people saying online rules, yet Google promotes Google with direct mail.
Yeah. 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 Was that a mailing that you sent out recently, or maybe I read it somewhere else? But yeah, Google Ads, they own Google Ads. They could advertise on their own platform
Yeah, no, I didn't do that.
They send direct mail saying, here's $100 towards your next Google ad
I
campaign.
think I've gotten that one. I didn't write it, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just reading about that. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
they own it. You'd think they could, but just getting their message out in different channels is
It's
important.
different. Yeah. And also there's various theoretical reasons why you would do that. One is getting your message out in different channels, multiple exposures. If you're reaching the same people with a direct mail, then a TV commercial, we know that works. So there's many reasons to do that.
Mhm. So how would a writer get how would you recommend a writer get into the heads of their readers? Like
Okay, I'm
your
glad you asked
B2C.
that.
Yeah.
Lots of answers, but I'll give you the big one for me.
All
There's a
right.
formula that I did not invent called B as in boy, D as in dog, F as in Frank, the BDF formula.
Okay.
What you want to do is you want to analyze three things about your target audience. B, what are the beliefs? What do they believe? For example, I do some work in the coin, numismatic coin collectible field. It's not a major area for me, but my dad was a coin collector. I have some nice coins. I've been a bullion investor. So I've done work in that field. And what you learn, you wouldn't know it unless you've been in it. If I came to Joe Blow who never worked in it, they wouldn't know this. Coin collectors are patriotic.
Sure.
Those appeals, but you only learn that through experience. So what do they believe? So I say, if you have an audience, what do they believe? And write down a list. Get together with your team and make a list of all the things you think your target market believes. The next one is desires. What do they want? And the next one is feelings. What emotions? What do they feel? Can you imagine doing this for some product that had to do with, I don't know, AI? And we said, well, how do people feel about AI? You'd be in the room for 2 days making a list of the various responses to that. So,
Yeah, sure.
so it's beliefs, desires, and feelings. And you do that analysis. I have a set of worksheets that I give clients for that, and they fill them out and they review them as teams, and then we review them. Can I give you an example of how this worked?
Absolutely.
Company came to me and they had a seminar they were promoting. They did seminars for IT people, programming, techie, but a lot of soft skills. How to do a proposal, how to write a proposal, how to give a presentation. And they had one that they had tested a mailing, and the title of the seminar was Interpersonal Skills for IT Professionals. And sometimes that gets a laugh when I give that in a seminar, but they did it and it did okay. They said, "Can you make it better?" And I said, let's do a BDF analysis. And when we did that, we said, what are the emotions? And one of the emotions that we came up with, one of the items on the list is that the emotion is that IT people have an adversarial relationship with the users they serve. They don't like us. We don't like them. And a side issue, I am actually on a low level of certified IT professional, but that's another story.
I spent 15 years in IT, and that
So
was actually something I wanted our team to focus on when I got moved up into
so
middle
then
management.
you get this. You
Yeah,
totally
but I wanted our team to focus on trying to eliminate that. Like rather than saying no, you
yeah.
can do everything. Like how can we help them get their jobs done better?
Yeah,
And
I mean
that was
that's
my
so
goal.
that's the attitude they should have had, but so
Yeah,
many didn't. So
sure.
this seminar was the purpose of it. Interpersonal skills for IT professionals. So we said there's an adversarial relationship. Based on that, we rewrote the headline. And the headline of our new mailer was not the title, but important news for every IT professional who has ever felt like telling an end user, quote, go to hell, unquote. That was the headline. It tripled the response and the signups to the seminar. It made a lot of money.
Yeah,
And that
good
was
call.
that's based on a BDF analysis. And that's if I have obviously this is an issue that you can discuss in depth, but if that you get say what's the one thing? BDF analysis. What are their beliefs? Make a complete list. What are their desires? What do they want? And what are their feelings? What are their emotions? What do they think about it?
And then do you think on the feelings and emotions, um, is a negative approach kind of the way to go? Like here's what you're losing, or is it more of a positive approach? Here's what you're getting, um, and or it just depends on the situation.
I think it depends on the situation. I read an article recently, I forget from whom, someone I respected, and I just can't remember, who said the negative, the fear is better. And there is a principle that people the only two motivations for humans is to gain reward or avoid pain. And that based on what you just said, you're right. It seems that the people are more motivated to avoid pain than to gain reward. That's how
Yep.
fearful they are. So probably there's a lot of what you said is true, and I'm sure I've done things like that. But probably most of mine, if I was to go back in my portfolio, probably more of mine were positive. Maybe a mistake on my part, but how do you get this how do you get this reward? But yeah, definitely you want to. And if my mind functioned better at this age, I probably could pull one out of my head. And if I looked on my portfolios, probably I did a lot where I said, "Don't get hurt this way." So I've used it,
Yeah.
and they're both powerful. But yeah, if you had to pick one or the other, probably the avoidance of. Well, I say the avoidance of pain is more a motivator. Now, there's a guy named. He may not want me to use his name.
You're listening to another exclusive interview from the Persuasion Play Podcast with Jeffrey Thomas. For more information about persuasion, motivation, and mindset, and how you can influence your brain and the brains around you, visit my website at https://goldmine.marketing.
He may not want me to use his name, but I want to credit him, Arthur Johnson, who's very well known in health field as a copywriter. And he said he said the mistake that health copywriters make is what you just said. They use fear too much.
Mm.
He said they use fear too much. What you should use instead of fear, he said, is hope.
Mm.
Not you're going to die of cancer, but now you're going to live a healthy, disease-free life. That's not the headline. I just threw that out, but he said
Yeah.
hope. He finds that hope works better than fear.
And there's probably cycles too. If every health promotion is fear, 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 the one that stands out is gonna.
Yeah. Also, yeah, that's probably another reason why it works for him because he's a minority.
Yeah.
Fear is easier to do. It's easier to think of. So
Mhm.
people, and it's more natural. That's how our minds are inclined. I'm that way. Everyone has a little hypochondria in them. So you're afraid. How many times have people, maybe not you or me, or maybe yes, you and me, you look on your arm and go, "What's that spot?" You know?
Right. Yeah.
And so yeah, fear and hope, pain and pleasure, avoiding punishment or gaining reward. Those are
Mhm.
the two. That's what it boils down to. One of those two things.
Yeah. Tony Robbins calls it the pain pleasure principle, I think.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
and he's right.
and Daniel Kahneman calls it prospect theory.
That I
Uh,
haven't heard. Yeah.
yeah, he's got a book called, well, he's passed now, but Thinking Fast and Slow, and it's about behavioral economics, and it's just fascinating. One of my favorite.
I didn't realize he was deceased. I've never read that book. I've heard of it.
Yeah, he died 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was a really good book. Um, I have, speaking of books again, I was looking through my email to kind of see when I first signed up for your email list. I'm pretty sure I got your name from Ben Settle in late 2018. I signed up for your email list on January 3rd of 2019. And
Mhm.
then I just started buying a number of ebooks from you. I think I bought, at least in that first year, like 3 or 4 of your $29 special reports.
Well, thank you.
So they're just like, I was a couple years into my career at that time, and I was just fascinated by and I still am. I've just got a lot of resources that I can't even always keep up with. But yeah, Bob, you've been um, a great source of inspiration and
Thank you.
knowledge for copywriters, not just myself, but across the industry.
Thank
It's
you for saying
been a
that.
good career.
You
Thank
know,
you.
the main thing for me is I feel I helped people, copywriters, freelancers. I help my clients. What we do for them. Some people would say, "Oh, you're a copywriter. You're just a salesperson." That's important. People, they not only do my clients make money for themselves, they can pay their employees. It's good. Selling is good. People who think selling is evil are just they're misguided or ignorant. So, I help people, individuals. I help my clients, which I admit pleases me. And, I made myself happy. I did what
Yeah.
I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. So yeah, it worked
Do you
out
do
for me.
it has worked out pretty well done. Do you do any other writing, any fiction writing or anything like
Oh
that?
yeah, if you look
Yeah.
at my list of books, and actually, if you go to bly.com and go to the bottom, there'll be a tab at the bottom that says books. You can literally see a list of my 110 books. And I wrote mainly nonfiction, but they're certainly not all business. They're on
Okay.
many other topics. I've written books on pop culture. on science. And I've written, I don't write a lot of fiction, but I have one book of all these years, one book of published by a small independent press of science fiction stories.
Oh, Asimov.
Well, he was my hero, yeah.
Yeah.
Freak Show of the Gods and Other Tales of the Bizarre. So I have, I've written a lot of books on a lot of different subjects.
I might have to check that one out. Do you agree with Eugene Schwartz that copywriters should just be like immersed in all the pop culture stuff nonstop? Like he would go to movies and stuff
Well, the
every.
funny thing about that is, and he was very nice to me. I didn't know him personally, but when he gave talks, he would mention me and he'd say some nice things. Um, and he was great. And I was, he's here, I'm here. But I was always that way naturally because the funny thing is, one of my fascinations in life is pop culture. I've
Okay.
written among these books,
Oh,
written half a dozen of them are pop culture books.
oh,
I wrote a book called The Unauthorized Star Trek Quiz Book.
okay.
I wrote a book called The Science Fictionary, a dictionary of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So I am
Mhm.
immersed in pop culture. My next book is a pop culture book about AI. It's called
Oh,
AI Apocalypse Now. How artificial intelligence is portrayed in science fiction, movies, TVs, films, and books. And so I love pop culture. And so when I heard that from him, that he's into that, and he's not he certainly was a vocal advocate of it. He's not the only one. Um, I always, Gary Halbert said the same thing. I was always that way. I always liked the popular stuff. I wouldn't say I'm stupid, but I do like some intellectual things. But if it became, it was between reading, Remembrance of Things Past or seeing a Godzilla movie, I'm kind of going to the Godzilla movie.
I hear you there. But like one thing I concern or whatever is the superhero movies. There's just too many. I don't even enjoy
That's
them.
funny that
I
you
don't
say
want to be
that.
immersed in that anymore. I'm so tired of it.
Well, that's funny. If I can speak to that for a second,
Please.
I
Yeah.
am a superhero fan, as you can imagine. I wrote a
Okay.
book on that called Comic Book Hero.
Yeah.
1001 trivia questions about superheroes from the Atoms to the X-Men. It's out of print, but you can get it on Amazon today. And I have a huge comic book collection. I have, you can't see them now because I removed them from the office because we're moving. So we're showing the house but this office was filled with Superman figures, Daredevil, Flash. I love, I love superheroes. But when it was the first major modern superhero movie that came out was Superman with Christopher Reeve. And
Mhm.
1978 or in 79, I was living in Baltimore and I remember I didn't have a date, but I drove to Johns Hopkins University where I took a class at night. I was working for Westinghouse, so I could see it. They were screening it, and I was mesmerized. And for years, I was so happy that these superhero movies were out. They've overloaded it. I feel as you do. I don't see them anymore. I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm the Superman fanatic, and I didn't see the new Superman movie. And I may
Oh,
not.
I hear it's quite good.
It
I
looks
haven't seen
good, but I may not do it. I didn't see a last of a lot of them. You
it.
know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's 800 Thor movies. It's just too much.
Yeah. No, I think the stories, are quite from the book, the comic books. They're engrossing and engaging. And Ben Settle talks about how Stan Lee, a lot of his characters are about flawed, before Stan Lee really took off. Comic books were about, the story of the villain and the battle. But then once Stan Lee started writing and creating new characters, he'd make them more human and give them flaws and drama and human elements. And I think that makes the comic book stories great. But the movies is just like bam, 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 zoom in, can't see what's going on. I don't know. They're just not my. I read comic books growing up, but yeah, the movies are just not my thing.
Some of them were. I mean, I liked a lot of them, but to me, it's not so much that I didn't like them because of what you said, the Bam Bam. I mean, I agree with you, but the books are better. But it's overload. How many how many different Batmen do I have to see?
Sure. Yeah. So that backing up real quick, tell me about your thoughts on AI for
This sums
copywriters and
up thought.
marketing and for everything.
The summed up thought is,
Yeah. All right.
and actually, if people sign up to my newsletter, I don't want to push them on. It's free.
Please. Yeah.
Bly.com/reports. I have an issue going out on this either today or next week. I think it's probably next week. And the article begins. It's a true story. I was in a bar the other day, local bar, and I heard three guys my age, older guys, talking about AI. The first one says, "I love AI. It's fantastic. It's going to change the world." The second guy says, "I effing hate AI. It sucks." And the third guy says, "Listen, guys, you can love AI, you can hate it, you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
I hate it. I actually hate it. I
Okay.
think AI, and if we had more time, I could go into it.
Please.
It's a bad thing. Well, if you want to, I think AI, my new book is about this, the AI apocalypse. I think AI is bad for the world. Um, you know, and I think it came out of the box too fast. Genie can't be put back in the bottle.
Mhm.
It may be the end of Western civilization as we know it. I think it is that bad.
So Western civilization, because certainly China has their AI cranked up too. So is it the end of all civilization or
Oh,
Western?
it's an old expression, the end of
Okay.
Western
Yeah. All right.
civilization.
So why do you think that? I mean, I'm personally not a huge fan of AI, but I do see its merits and its uses, and I was just using it yesterday for something else. Um, but as a writer, it's not really my go-to because I want to,
That's how I feel. It's a
you know,
right. It's not my go-to.
yeah.
So, and there's so many viewpoints on AI today. In fact, my one wish for the rest of my life, which will never happen, I would like to have one day that I'm awake, that I have the TV on, I'm on the internet, and I don't hear once about either AI or Donald Trump. That will never ever happen. That's,
Not anymore.
but why do I think it's bad? I could give many reasons, but for example, automation has always been bad for a segment of the population,
Sure.
those whose jobs it takes. AI is digital automation, but automation used to affect mainly the blue collar guys. Now it's affecting the white collar guys, and it's bad. A lot of people. I just wrote something about this. I could actually pull up the statistic and read it to you, but
Yeah.
the Gregory Hinton,
Yeah.
he's a guy, he's known as the godfather of AI. That's what the Guardian calls him. He
Okay.
believes he's one of the foremost computer scientists. He says he thinks there's a 10 to 30% probability, 10 to 20% probability, really, that in 30 years AI will wipe out human life on the planet. And what was that other statistic I had? I won't pull it up because I won't be able to see you, but it was I forget where it ran, but there's
Give the gist.
it's just the gist is that by 2030, up to 30% of humans will have lost their jobs to AI.
And
Now,
that's just years. That's years away. It's around the corner.
yeah, it's around the corner, and people will say, "Well, Bob, but AI creates jobs, loses jobs, but it creates jobs too." The
Hmm.
problem is, and we could go deep into this, it doesn't create jobs for the people who are losing them.
Hmm.
These are jobs for other people. So I mentioned I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey. So when my mother would take me to my dad's office building, it was so old, it had a manual elevator with an elevator operator. You're too young to remember this.
I remember that.
Yeah, you do remember. I'm surprised.
Oh,
And the guy was so nice to me. My mother, I loved visiting dad at the office. She'd bring me in, and it's a guy, Lou, he was so kind to me. One day we get there, I'm 9 years old. Lou's not there. And we look in the elevator. They converted it to push button.
hmm.
Lou lost his job. He never worked again. He
Hmm.
didn't want to lose his job. He was older. He had no skills. Everybody says, well, people were retrained. I'm 68. I'm not going to be retrained to become, a veterinarian. I'm too
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
So people are going to lose their jobs and not be able to find other jobs or other jobs. And so it's bad on that aspect. I also think it is, you said you don't use it much to do direct writing. I use a ChatGPT on a limited basis for some things in copywriting, but not to write. I hate prompting. I think I wish Snoopy would shoot down all the prompt pilots with the Red Baron, and they would all fall into the sea. But you know, I use it for one specific thing in copywriting, but I don't use it to write copy.
Mhm.
And people say, well, like I saw today, I got an email that said, now you can write your book in days, not weeks or months. And people, and if you go on my Facebook wall now, you'll see this up there. And I said, and you think this is good?
Yeah.
This is horrible. Because what it says is when I wrote my first book in 1982 for McGraw-Hill, a hardcover book, we cared that we did the best book we could, and we did it lovingly and with care, and we wanted to give the reader the most valuable book we could. People don't want that now. How can I get a quick book out there to put into my funnel, and I don't care how crappy it is?
Yeah.
All I care about is how fast I can do it. To me, as a book lover and a writer, that is anathema. I hate it. So
Yeah.
I don't love, that's why I hate AI.
I think there's like you said, just get the book into the funnel. People get the free book or the $4 book, $3.95 shipping and handling, and they may not even read it. The whole idea is to just get the name
I
on the
know.
list, and
And to me, that's not what books are about.
sure. No.
I mean, you have my copywriter's handbook. So that's the book that is gotten me the most direct ROI in terms of people. Well, ROI from a book is direct plus indirect. Direct is book sales and royalties.
Sure.
Indirect is someone reads the book and they hire me to do a seminar. They hire me to write 10 direct mail packages. That book has made me the most money. And you look at it, that wasn't written in days.
Oh no.
Look how thick it is. I mean, it's 400 pages.
Yep.
When I wrote that, I put into it always the best information I could about copywriting. And I didn't worry about how long is it taking.
Yeah. This is the 4th edition.
This is the 4th edition. The first one was out in 1985.
Okay. Is there another one yet, or is this the newest?
No, the 4th is the last. I am 68 years old. So, this is probably it.
Yeah, I'm not sure when I got this a couple years ago.
But that doesn't mean I won't have other works, whether regularly published books or ebooks or even courses, which I'm not a big fan of, but I've done them, that will update what's in there.
Well, I think too, like a lot of back to the direct mail, for example, or digital mail, a lot of it's with testing, and you're learning a lot from testing. And if you're letting AI do all your thinking for you, you're not going to even necessarily know what's worth testing or what, why this is good and this is bad writing or good and bad persuasion, right?
Well, there are studies I think you've seen them. They're being pushed around on the internet today that say using AI hurts human cognition.
Yeah.
It's academic studies that seem to prove it fairly conclusively, and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Outsourcing our thinking and
right. I was in 2 meetings. One was a virtual meeting of copywriters, and they were all discussing how great AI is. You got to use AI to be a copywriter. Bob, you're so stupid not to. You'll do everything faster. You'll be able to run through 800 headlines in 2 seconds. And I said, how about coming up with one good one? But then there are people. I was in a room with journalists from high-level people. I won't tell where it was, but New York Times editors, Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, Men's Health, and they basically, not universally, but basically said they hate if they think you wrote your article with AI, they'll reject it.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know if you spend any time on LinkedIn. I know we connected there.
I do.
But yeah, people are constantly saying, stop putting AI comments, it's just automated to make it boost engagement or something, but
Right.
they're mindless, or it's when I write, sometimes I used to use bullet points, emojis that I thought were relevant to the point. And now
Right.
AI does that, or AI uses M dashes, and all the copywriters are like, got to stop doing that because everyone just assumes it's AI writing it then.
My generic term for that is content pollution.
Okay. I like that, content pollution. Yeah, and it just put out more and more content nonstop. And how does somebody get to stand out? Like
It's more and more difficult to stand out.
it is. And like when I have a room full of books on copywriting, my brain has been filled with expertise.
What's the hierarchy? You can learn something to some level by reading about it or studying it. You learn it to a much better level by doing it.
Sure.
You learn it to the highest level by teaching it to others.
Yeah, sure.
Which you're doing now.
Well, you're doing it. You're
Both
the
of
guest.
Both of us are doing it.
Yeah. Right. So what's your day? You're moving. Where are you moving to?
Well, this is a sad story because I'm 68, my wife's 70, and we live in a house that we love, but it's up on a hill, steep driveway, multi-levels, not huge, but it's 3,300 square feet. The kids are out of the house.
Mhm.
it we don't need it anymore. It's too much to take care of. And so plus we both have uh, walking problems. She has arthritic knees. I have peripheral arterial disease, which makes it a little hard for me to walk. So going up the steps up and down, it's not a serious thing. I walk around all the time, but it's still a little more difficult. And we found a house that is a one floor house, a true ranch. There's no attic, there's no basement. It's all on one level and it's flat. It doesn't
Okay.
have a ski slope for the driveway. I mean, for me to take the garbage cans to the curb and back is a lot. So we're moving, but we had to grab it right away. Everybody wanted it in this development. We made an offer. My wife, we saw it on a Sunday. My wife made an offer by Tuesday. They accepted it, which I wasn't that happy about because I don't like to move. I hate moving.
Yeah.
My
Sure.
wife and her family, they were nomads. The time she was growing up, they must have moved 15 times.
Oh, well.
My father bought his first house when I was 10 in 1967, and then my parents lived there the rest of their lives. They never moved. That's what I would have preferred.
Right.
But so we're moving, but it's stressful for me. And so we bought a house that is in what they call an active adult community. They take care of the lawn, they shovel the snow. There's a clubhouse for my wife because she likes to be social. So it's a change in life. I didn't really want it, but it's a nice place. And we said, her brother's the real estate agent. He said, you could wait another year to find a place like this.
Sure.
You should grab it. So we did. Wasn't looking to move, but I have to.
Do you just have collections of direct mail samples and
Well, guess what?
all that? Yeah.
I had to we're going from a 3,300 square foot house to a 2,200 square foot house with no basement. You got to get rid of a lot of stuff.
Uh-huh.
I Like right now, I have bins filled with all my direct mail samples. Do I save them? I don't even mean my swipe files. I mean my stuff. Because
Yeah.
you have to keep in mind, I've been doing this. When you get to this stage, I can't believe how many samples I have, and they're all over the place. So they're in notebooks now. So, some of them have been digitized,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to digitize all of them. I hate to get rid of them.
Hmm.
Even if I have it digitized, I love the paper sample. But I'm getting rid of a lot of stuff. I had to get rid of a lot of my books. For example, I mentioned I've written at this point over 100 books. When you write a book, your publisher gives you a box of books, 20 free copies. You don't need them. So what do? You throw them in the attic, you throw them in the basement. If you multiply
Yeah.
20 books times 100 books, I had to get rid of 2,000 books of mine that I wrote that I have no need for. I
Oh
only
no.
keep one or two copies of each. We had a truck haul away my life's work like it was dumpster.
That's
Like
heartbreaking.
it was horrible. I hated it. It was traumatic.
Where did they go? Did you donate them or did they just get recycled?
People don't want them anymore. It's like people when you move, people say, "Oh, you want my furniture?" No one wants your furniture.
Yeah.
No one wants your books. So honestly, no, the library didn't want them. Said, "What are we going to do with these?"
Yeah.
We need 20 copies of the direct mail handbook. So no, you can't donate them. They were literally thrown away.
You got a list. Offer them to your list.
No, it's not even worth
395
doing.
shipping and handling.
I certainly could have done that, but the administrative work of that, especially now we're so
Oh
busy
yeah.
moving,
Yeah.
we when you got to move in a hurry, you just have to let it go.
Hmm.
Thrown out so much stuff, clothes, belts. So I thought sometimes I say, "Where are my belts? I can't find my belts." Then when we're going through the closet, I found I owned like 300 belts. So what am I going to do with them? So you throw away a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
you're young, but I'll warn you, when you get to an older age, you should start thinking about trimming and downsizing. Because
Yeah. Well,
again, what?
my parents moved a few years ago and they trimmed and downsized quite a bit into a single story Rambler. But it does have a basement and they still have quite a bit down there. I
Yeah,
got two kids and my wife is fantastic at getting rid of stuff. Every week or two, she takes a load to the Goodwill of clothes they've outgrown, toys they've outgrown. But I'm looking around and I still got a ton of it.
but I'm sentimental. Like when we're moving, we found in my younger son Steven's room boxes of stuff he had from elementary school, projects and artwork. And I can't throw these away. I said, "Steven, would you take them?" What do you think he said? "Dad, I don't want that stuff."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, my mother did that when she was downsizing. She said she would come over every week. Here are your report cards from elementary school. Here are all here are all the Superman comic books you drew because I was a big drawer. And,
Oh, cool.
yeah, and I said, Mom, I'm not, I don't want them. I'm going to throw them away. She goes, no,
Yeah,
no. So she left them off and I threw them away.
heartbreaking, but that's
It actually, you should not supposed to become attached to stuff,
yeah.
but sometimes I think I am a little bit.
Well, when you spend a lot of your life and time and energy with it.
Yeah, especially like my younger son is like me, not very athletic. He's interested in intellectual stuff. So we find his little pamphlet he made when he was in first grade. My name is Stephen Bly. I am in first grade. My favorite subject is gym. And when we saw that, we cracked up and we showed it to him. He was laughing hysterically. He goes, I don't know.
Yeah. Funny. All right. Hey, Mr. Bly, I really want
Thank
to
you.
thank you for your time. I appreciate your time this morning, your stories, your insights. It was
This
great.
was a great pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Nice meeting you and talking with you.
You as well.
Have
Thank
a
you
good
very much. Thanks everybody
Thank
for
you.
joining us on the Persuasion Play Podcast. My name is Jeffrey at Goldmine.marketing. Today's excellent guest was Mr. Bob Bly. You can find his website at bly.com.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.